Shall we begin with the canonization? I always loved the poem. It's one of my all-time favorites. We shall begin the semester and the year with the canonization. I look upon the canonization as one of the finest specimens of Donne's poetry, as one of the most perfect exemplifications of metaphysical poetry. There are two ways to approach a poem. You can begin with the historical background, or as the new historicists might put it, the foreground. You can discuss the age in which the poet lived. You can analyze the biography of the poet. You can evaluate the influences on the poet. You can look at the impact the poet made on his contemporaries. You can pinpoint the major works of the poet. And finally, you can go to the prescribed poem. Or, you can leap into the poem. Which do you want me to do? Good. That's precisely my desire. So we shall leap into the canonization. The canonization of John Donne. What is the meaning of the word canon? Large gun. Large gun. But you are thinking of C-A-N-N-O-N, and I am thinking of C-A-N-O-N. It's a totally different thing. Canon means large gun, big gun, used in warfare. C-A-N-O-N, canon, means list. Canonical poets, canonical authors, canonical books. Canon means list. Canonical authors are the list of authors accepted as great in a particular literature. In this particular case, canon means list of saints published by the Catholic Church. Canonization is the long-drawn, complicated process by which a person is declared a saint. Mother Teresa of Calcutta has been canonized. She is now known as Saint Teresa of Calcutta. So canonization is the process by which the Catholic Church declares someone a saint. I have a question for you. You have listened to the title of the poem, the canonization. Does it sound like a religious poem or does it sound like a secular poem? Yes, religious poem. That was what I thought when I read the canonization for the first time. I wanted to read the Bible, but instead of reading the Bible, I thought this might be as holy as the Bible, and I read the canonization. So the impression you get is that this poem has a very religious theme, a very holy theme, a very pious theme, a very pure theme. I shall read to you the first line of the poem. For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me laugh. Is it a religious poem or a secular poem? It's a secular poem. It's a very irreligious poem. For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me laugh. Shall I translate it into Malayalam? Devate ortha ningal mindadirikku. Njanonnu premichotte. A very, very secular poem. Shall I write the line on the board? For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me laugh. The poet raises expectations and then shatters them to the ground. The poet raises expectations and then dashes them to the ground. The poet gives the impression that it's a very religious poem. In fact, I once read the canonization instead of reading the Bible. But when I read the first line, I understood the canonization was a very, very unholy poem. For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me laugh. I have a question for you. Is it an abrupt beginning or a gradual beginning? Abrupt beginning. That is an important characteristic of metaphysical poetry. Abrupt beginning. Shocking beginning. A beginning which knocks the reader off his balance and captures his attention. For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me laugh. What are the two most important words in the poem? Sorry, words in the line, the first line of the poem. Don't get tensed. Be happy. Be relaxed. For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me laugh. It's a very personal choice. It's a very subjective thing. You should choose two words from this line which you consider to be the most important words of this line. Love, good. Tongue, I would say God. That is love and God. They say tongue. My God, you're so secular. Okay, if you look at it, this line, there are two words which are equally balanced. One is God, the other is love. Two very important. Tongue, of course, can be the third most important. God and love. This is a good example of the amalgamation of the spiritual and the secular in metaphysical poetry. God and love. The integration of the religious and the worldly. The integration of the holy and the unholy. In fact, this line is sufficient to give you a good impression, a good idea of the entire world of metaphysical poetry. Abrupt beginning, integration of the religious and the secular. And most of the metaphysical poets were great scholars. They were priests. On the one hand, they practiced a very worldly life. On the other hand, they preached very religious sermons. Okay? They used to say, do as I say, not as I do. Do as I say. Follow my advice, but never do as I do. Okay? For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me laugh. Tell me something about the diction. Is it a very, very poetic diction or a very prose-like diction? Prose-like diction. So, metaphysical poetry, abrupt beginning, amalgamation of the spiritual and the worldly, prose-like diction. What about the tone of the poem? Is it conversational or is it very musical? Conversational tone. There are other aspects of metaphysical poetry which are not visible here. Scholarship. The metaphysical poets were great scholars and they wrote their poetry mainly to display their scholarship. Show off their scholarship. For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love. This poem is spoken by a person madly in love. To whom is it addressed? It's addressed to a friend. You know how these friends are. They become jealous of you when you fall in love. They're good friends, very loyal friends, very devoted friends. But the moment you fall in love, they oppose it. They advise you against it. They say it is dangerous. They say it is because they care for you that they are telling you, don't get into this romance. Okay? So such a friend, good friend, very good friend. But the moment you start conducting a romance, the friend becomes jealous. He says, no, it's because I care for you I say this. Or I'm going to ring up your father. I'm going to call your father and inform him that you are conducting a romance without his knowledge. Because I care for you. Because I love you. Because it is my duty to inform your father and ensure that you get beaten up by your father. So that is it. This poem is addressed to a friend by the lover. And the friend keeps on telling the speaker, put an end to your romance. This romance is dangerous. This romance is bad. This romance is wicked. This romance is evil. This romance will take you to hell. For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me laugh. Or chide my palsy or my gout. I'm trying to read the next few lines. Or chide my palsy or my gout. What is chide? Chide means scold. Chide means rebuke. Chide means criticize. Chide means verbally attack. Or chide my palsy. What is palsy? Palsy. I've heard this word somewhere. Palsy. Paralysis. I think I am suffering from palsy. Myself. I always feel that the moment I start walking, I feel palsy. Palsy means paralysis. Palsy occurs in a poem by John Keats. What are the odes of John Keats? Tell me the names of the odes. Grecian urn, not Grecian urn. Autumn, not autumn. Nightingale. This word occurs in the Nightingale ode, where palsy shakes a few sad last grey hairs, where youth grows spectre thin and dies. Where palsy shakes a few sad last grey hairs, or chide my palsy or my gout. Gout means joint pain, rheumatism. Gout means joint pain, rheumatism. Or chide my palsy or my gout. I have a question for you. This is a very romantic poem. This is a love poem. Have you ever heard of a poet speaking of his own paralysis in a love poem? That is the brilliance of Donne. Even if you are suffering from paralysis, you hide it from your girlfriend so that she will marry you. And only after the marriage she will discover that you are suffering from palsy. That is the usual methodology in this world. But here is a poet who proclaims, or chide my palsy or my gout. Make fun of my palsy, my paralysis, or my gout. Gout is joint pain, rheumatic pain. I'm suffering from both palsy and gout. There was a great scholar in English literature. He was a poet, he was a dramatist, he was a critic, he was an editor, he was a conversationalist who suffered from gout. He was known as the literary dictator of London. Yes? I think you are giving me the right answer. Please repeat it. Dr. Johnson. I did not say lexicographer because if I had said lexicographer, you would have immediately given the answer. Johnson suffered from gout and to some extent from palsy. Or chide my palsy or my gout.